There we go. I'm being recorded. And just so folks know, as I was doing a little homework on shared decision-making committees, technically shared decision-making committees is work of the school board. And because of that, open meetings laws do fall underneath that. And with the kind of the recent executive orders to allow these meetings to happen virtually, and it does succumb to the open meetings law that has the video recording requirement. So that is why that is there. And why a little bit of the change from last year, because I learned a little something and we're just trying to get better a little bit every day. So with that, today we have a series of things to go through, and it's really kind of the setup for where we're going to head over really the next couple of months to get through the remainder of the school year. Part of tonight is about the plan that we are in preparation for. And really the plan part is talking about the return to the school and the transportation side of things. And that's really the big part. And then a little bit of a conversation about the pace about how we return. The next pieces really fall to preparation for next year. We'll talk about that a little bit. And I'm just writing this down so I have it. And part of that is a little bit about Title I that I just want to jump folks into real quickly so we can see that. But we generally in these meetings look to keep it to an hour or less because it is after. It's been a big busy day for everybody. It's been a long day, and so we try to get right to it. That's in there. This is a regular meeting, so if you have to contribute, this is not like a board meeting. It's more like a committee meeting. So if you have something to contribute, please jump right in and do so. And we will go ahead and move forward from there. Anyone have any questions before we get started? Okay, great. So transportation and part for school. I am going to share a little bit of my screen here and talk about getting kids back. So I think that's the one I want right there. Okay, are you seeing a great big screen that says transportation pickup to the left? And in there, okay, good. That's set. This is from our public meetings from back last August, when we had to put together the plan initially to get school back open, to get everyone into place. And part of that initial conversation was about the transportation. And it's just as kind of a really quick refresher, we talked about how we had to reduce our population density, about maintaining our social distancing and promoting a respiratory and hand hygiene. And then we talked about a couple different models of what that would look like on the bus. That bus model in the latest guidance really hasn't changed any, and hasn't really changed since its inception. That idea of really this version up top that I'm circling around, if you can see if you can see things circle there, they're going to do this so that I'm easier to say. So this has really been the model that we've been following, and it's been one student per seat that's in place, with the bottom version being the ideal. So the reason why the bottom is ideal, every other seat, we're away from each other. You can see kind of the, that diameter of, that 6 feet away from each other. So if you end up with a case like this and you have a student, to say where the red dot is here, ends up being a COVID positive on a school bus, there will be no one else except for maybe this one student that might have to be contact traced. The reason is when they look at proximity to this positive case, they will look immediately in front and immediately to the side of where that is. So depending on this student here, instead of you just have one student that might be quarantined along with the positive student. If in this model, if this same student is positive, this student is going to go into quarantine, this student is going to go into quarantine, this student is going to go into quarantine. So we end up losing 4 students versus the possibility of 1 or 2 that's there. So why do we do it this way versus this way? It is strictly about capacity and the ability to get everyone into school on time with the bus routes that we have and we're able to do. Our larger buses, our 65 passenger buses, actually with the elementary kids on them, we're able to keep something closer to this. There's only one or two close buses that come close to here. But what's going to happen is when we get to a point where we are maybe bringing all of the elementary school kids back, we may get closer to this model. So if we end up with someone who is positive on the bus, it's going to impact more kids. Looking to here, we may end up venturing into this place if we get a bus that's too many, or we may end up doing what we've done this week for the elementary kids, is rechanged our routes around to be able to kind of chop up to reduce this amount more so than not. But that's the current plan for buses and getting kids into school. The transportation for parents, we will still encourage folks to bring their own students in. I think that will help keep this down. It's certainly done so over the past school month since September. Is in doing it that way has kept, our ridership down, which has been helpful for bus contamination, for lack of a better word. But when we get to greater volumes, it's just something more we're going to have to pay attention to. All of the cleaning and all the pieces that we currently do will remain in place. We still disinfect buses at least once a day, usually twice. Once after the morning run, once after the afternoon run, and then if it gets used for athletics, the buses that are midday runs, they get disinfected as well. So all those pieces will still take into place. It's just that we're looking at having more kids into place. Any comments, questions, concerns, or thoughts about students on buses?
Dr. Glover, is the top picture like 3 feet? Are those kids like 3 feet apart in that? I'm just curious with those new regulations. It seemed like it, but I couldn't tell.
These kids here are probably closer, they're inside 6. They're probably closer to 4. These kids, if they sit in this configuration, are more than 6 feet away from each other. We've been doing this because these seats here are 4 feet tall and act as a barrier. As long as everyone's backside is in the seat, anything like sneezing or anything, and they're all masked. So you have basically a seat that acts as a barrier, as well as a mask on a student, as a double protection to allow us to have students sit in this way. But from front to back, they aren't 6 feet. They're probably closer to 4.
Dr. Glover, could I add also in that the key is that they're all facing in the same direction. So that's also another reason why you're allowed to do that, because they're facing in the same direction.
I was just asking because if the regulations are changing that kids can be within 3 feet, I was just wondering how much difference it was. That's all. I was just curious.
We would probably be able to put one more student either here or here, I would think. Right now, if everyone's from the same family, they can sit in the same seat. So the Glover kids could sit here. They could sit next to each other. I don't know if the driver wants the Glover kids sitting next to each other. Siblings in the morning can sometimes not be the friendliest of people to each other.
Or the Glover kids don't want to sit with each other.
Yeah.
The kids that usually don't want to do it.
For COVID purposes, they're able to sit next to each other because they come from the same household. But as you put 2 in this seat, then it does create issues over here, because then this 6 feet then turns into 3, which is why the health department generally says you have one person who's positive, they just get everyone who's adjacent to that one positive person. The challenge comes is when it's this person. Notice in this model, there's no one in that seat. In this model, if that person gets it, then that hits the driver, and then we lose the driver for the bus, and that's the hardest hit we can take. Knock on wood, that hasn't been too much of an issue this year. But Julie's point is certainly a valid one, that it's everyone is facing the same direction, and that lets us use those barriers, the back seats as barriers, which lets us get away with having those more students in the seat. Anything else? Anything? Okay. So here, this is the drop off. Let me see if I can, nope. Oh, that was fun. Can you see this diagram okay? Okay. So this is the school. If you can see the faint outline, it's here. So in the faint outline, this right here is the primary school. This is the main building here, and this is the high school. The circle over by the high school doors, the bus loop as we all know it, with the breezeway connecting the buildings. And then of course, this goes back to the parking lot that's in the back. This is the drop off. This is the drop off in the morning. Right now in our thinking, it's not making any changes to this with the exception of where we drop students off. Because if we think we're going to have all of the elementary students back, it's going to be tough to keep them all here. Because there are days where we are back up to the stoplight with the number of people and the buses all trying to fit into this location or trying to get down into here and to drop off kids here in the mornings. So the thought is if they maintain this loop as it is, except any of our 5th and 6th grade students will come over here to the circle. So if a parent is driving their 5th or 6th grader into school, they'll come into here, they will drop off at the circle drive, and then those kids will just walk to here rather than staying in the elementary lane, if you will. It will cause some, we did it this way before to try to keep the kids cohorted. So to keep the high school students here and to keep the elementary students here. So that'll break that cohorting up a little bit, but it will be able to take, what do we think, Karen, about 60 kids if every student comes back, and move them into this location.
It might be a little closer to 75 kids, maybe 80
Okay.
if they all came back.
Okay. So that is, that's the plan. So we'll still have a drop off here. And this drop off here will be for younger students. As it is now, like the pre-K and the K, and our walkers are getting on here. And then back here, it tended to be our older elementary students. The one piece we aren't 100% on yet is on the location of and how we're going to be able to work out if we have 3 classrooms for kids per grade level in order to keep our social distancing into place, or if it ends up being, or if a different configuration comes, then we may need to do some adjustments here in order to get the kids in there safely and also mind the traffic pattern out to this part of the street. So right now, this part of the primary building is the hallway's clear. You can walk down it. We still got work to do, but it's there. The classrooms we're working on clearing. We might have the space available to us come up here in April, depending on how the approvals of the plan go. And if we have the space into April, some of the kids who are going to be here or in here may drop off here, and the other kids may drop off into the back, just in an effort to keep this line of traffic flowing and prevent any kind of log jam from happening out on East Broadway. Any thoughts from anybody?
The only thought I had was just if we go to this, it's not directly related to transportation per se, but that we would need to talk to the cafeteria about increasing the number of bagged breakfasts that are distributed on that side, because we'd have additional students coming in. They would pick up the breakfast on the way down to their classroom, correct? Is that what you guys are doing over on the other side? So that would be the only thing, is just, I don't know how many they would project to add to that, but, or maybe having a second cart and a second person, with one person handing out all of those additional, probably in addition to what they are, they may need a second person and cart.
I can
Okay.
get those numbers easily enough. She has a record of every kid every day that has taken them. She knows what grade levels take the most, so I can get those numbers easily enough.
But even if we break it up so that not all the kids are congregating right in that entry area, we might have to relocate the breakfast carts, maybe have one for elementary and one for high school kids, and maybe a little separated.
Yep.
Any other thoughts? Okay, so for the pickup, really here, not any changes. The pickup for here, this is the bus loop. We retreat the afternoon the same way we've kind of always treated the bus loop. This is that we park, we park all the buses here. And then the kids get onto the buses, they all come into this direction. And then after they get on the bus here, the difference here is that they drive over to here and then pick up. And then they pick up the high school students from here. Really don't think we need to change anything there unless there's a thought of taking these kids and then moving them to the circle drive. But really the only reason we were thinking of moving these kids was because of the traffic jam in the morning. But if they're parked here and if they're going to be parked on campus, I don't see any reason to need to change that. So all of our walkers can walk out the front door as they normally do. They can get picked up here. Yeah, you can get picked up here. Our students here who are our drivers, and everyone can just kind of digress out that way. Any thoughts there? Here's one place that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I was on mute. That's my apologies. I think when we're presenting this to the community, it's just important to just basically say no change, correct? Because it's the same process. So we're just changing the morning drop-off location, but not the PM is no change. I mean, it'll be a change internally because our 5th and 6th graders will board the bus on my side, on the circle side, but that's an internal change. For the parents, no change in the PM pickup location, correct?
The only piece here that I think we might need to impact and parents who are on, if you've kind of suffered this, let me know and what thoughts you have, is that I'm hearing from the courthouse that we have a lot of parents are staging over here by the courthouse. And so we're having students kind of cross here where this ends up being an uncontrolled walkway.
Mhm.
And kids are coming across over here to get into here, and then parents are leaving from there.
Right. Yes, I'm hearing that. And I think we talked about putting someone out there to kind of be a crossing guard, correct? Or no?
That's one idea, unless someone has a different one or a better one. Because we just have to make sure that we have the staff on to be able to do it.
Yeah. I would say, as I just noticed, you have 712 pickup in the circle. We don't do that. They've been going, originally that was all on Broadway in the front there. Because the buses come around so quick, but I mean, they're pretty efficient now, unless I let everyone out, but then even now, without advertising that, and we've told them we don't do that, the buses the buses don't even fit in the circle. They stick out a little bit. So, that's just not possible to have cars sitting in the circle when the buses are coming around. I have to ask them to leave. So that's the only, if we're changing that to pick up in the circle, we were not doing that before. Because a lot of times their families picking up multi-grade level kids anyway. So
Right.
that's the only thing, unless we tell them they line up on Warren Street or something, but that's the whole kids crossing right there. We have to change the time. This is not possible to have cars parked in there when the buses are coming in.
That actually, Julie, that 7 to 12 pickup in the circle is for students on the bus. The rest, they all go out. They
It's
go
on
out
the
the front.
bus. Okay, I'm sorry, I read that incorrectly. Thank you for, I'm tired, I'm fried. We had a really intense meeting, until like 5 or 6. Danny and Dawn can attest. So I apologize, that's my fault. I'm sorry. You could have just straightened me out, Dave. That was fine.
All right, no
I
problem.
apologize. Strike that, everybody. Strike that from the record.
Yeah, this section of the video will now be edited.
Yes. I
Um,
stand corrected.
and this moves on to other things that we are gonna, it's there, so that is the basics of the transportation plan. It's really just kind of an adjustment to what we're doing. The morning, just really moving some kids to a different entrance to help prevent any kind of log jam on East Broadway. And then in the afternoon, just adding some more personnel outside to kind of help promote safety. Any other thoughts on the transportation end of things from anybody? Okay. That ends item number 1. So item 2, let's sit here, and I don't have a screen. I don't have a PowerPoint or anything here to this. I'm just really interested in what your ideas are, is about for the pace of returning. So if we go and we have the meeting comes up and we present the plan here the week after, and the plan is approved, I don't think that we want to say on Thursday, everyone comes back in the door on the same day. I'm not sure that's our best move. So does anyone have any thoughts on, the pacing on, well, we want to make sure we want to get our kids in here as quickly as we can, but we also want to do it safely to make sure everything works. We don't want to, have too many kids back all at once that we end up creating another hotspot in the school and end up having COVID issues. We have to close again. So what thoughts does anyone have about kind of the pace of return? How fast do you think's too fast? How slow you think's too slow? I'm just kind of curious to your thoughts.
Well, I think we're looking at a lot of factors here because there are other rooms that are going to have to be set up. And kind of as a conversation you and I had earlier today was, we don't want to jump and start moving, prior to the board meeting, and then the board say, we're not going to do that, or, so it's kind of like we're doing this waiting game right now, and we have multiple people that we want and need to move in order to make this happen, and get certain rooms ready for those third classrooms.
Okay.
And that's going to take a wee bit of time.
Okay. So timing was set up. What else?
I was on mute. Quick question, quick point about families at mixed grade levels. So I think I've heard a little bit about, I think it's challenging when you have families and kids are coming. So some kids are coming to school and some kids aren't. I think especially some of the younger kids, I've heard a little bit of that in some conversation. So I think it's gonna be kind of hard. Well, why do I have to go to school, but my sibling who's in 5th grade doesn't have to go in person today? I think our families mostly have adjusted, but we did see that with 1 or 2 families when some of a few of the kids with special circumstances came back from a same family where there might be one child that was coming for 4 days and the other ones weren't. And that was a little bit of a difficulty. So it's just something to think about. I don't know, maybe it won't be that much of an issue depending on how, if it only takes a week or two difference, it might be fine. The other thing is just some conversation to share, and Danny and Don can jump in from our ELPT meeting that we just wrapped up. So our, just a quick overview is that we, as a group, came to a consensus about choosing a model where all the students come back on Fridays, and alternate between purple and gold Fridays, so alternate between the teams. So we came up with a schedule that we'll present for that. We did have a bit of discussion about, we are mindful that the high school students sometimes oversee siblings at the elementary level, and that we wanted to be mindful of that, because I think the consensus is that we want to start as soon as possible. So possibly the beginning of fourth quarter, but recognizing that elementary may not be ready. One of the kind of thoughts that we had to handle that challenge is that and this has happened before, where the elementary, maybe because of quarantine or different reasons, might be shut down. A few of our kids have had to stay home, and that we've shown flexibility for that. They could participate remotely from home. So I think we would want to communicate that well, but for us, our kids aren't coming back every day, and we're not going to gain as much time as the elementary. So I think it's important for us is to try, some of the conversation was to try to make our conversion happen a little sooner than later. To wait until maybe May when the entire elementary comes back would be, I think, a loss for us. And then by the time the kids get on the schedule, and I think we can have that flexibility for the kids that need to stay home. It's not a great amount, it's a small percentage, and I think we can accommodate those kids, but we don't want to hold up all of our kids for that reason. So I don't know if there are other thoughts on that. We are a little contingent on the elementary, but I would say it's probably affects about, less than 10 kids from my experience. Don and Danny, did I kind of articulate kind of how we wanted to deal with that?
I know the consensus, yes, Julie, you absolutely did. The consensus from the high school staff was we wanted our students as soon as possible. But there was grave concerns about helping out at home and having those kind of responsibilities and interfering with the elementary. So yeah, I think you did.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're going to figure out as a faculty how we would communicate that out, because we will be mindful of that. And in the past, the families have contacted me or the teachers directly. So I think as long as we're ready for that, but we're not going to have as much gain as the elementary. So, those Fridays are a really big deal to us to get those going.
Well,
Well, along with that timeline, I have to say that there's also making sure we have enough coverage, because with the 3-class model, in that model, I've put in for more aides for support, because we're no longer in that 4-day, it's to the 5 days. So hiring is going to be a piece for those aides that we would be in need of. So that's a piece as well in that timeline.
so what I'm hearing is, basically that we think in our preparations and gearing up for coming back to full time, that's just going to naturally cause us to start at different times.
Well, it kind of looks that way if the board approves what the BLPT at the high school suggested, then the high school would start on the 23rd. And I don't think the elementary will have the space or the aides to start at that time. Will they, Karen?
I'm not, well, again, it depends on the whole AIDS situation, and where we're at with that. I mean, honestly, I think we could get it up and running by the 26th, by the time, or at least like, who was it? I think it was Sophia made the suggestion of doing it certain grades, maybe at a time, like stagger it. It's not a bad idea, but again, that's going to leave some kids at home. And that's the only problem with that, because if I can get my, say, first and second, if I can get K through second in here, what happens with the third, fourth, and fifth and sixth graders who are still at home on those Fridays? That's going to push high school back. Will it make that process of getting them into some classes sooner than the 26th? Yes, but to me, it's looking like the earliest that I can probably get everything set up to go for a full week would be the 26th.
That won't put us back. I mean, we realize that maybe there might be some kids that don't come that first Friday. So, and we're willing to work with that, our teachers.
Can I just throw a wrench in there or something? I don't know if it's a wrench or not, but like if I were a parent and I had kids K through 6 and then 7 through 12, I'd lose my mind if they're starting at 2 different times again. I'm not trying to, I think I want my kids back as soon as possible, but also the people trying to plan for their lives and coverage for their kids. And I know that I have kids, some kids that are at dad's house that live in Fort Edward and then they pop over here for 2 days. There's just logistics and people need time to plan. So
I
in
agree.
that regard, we need to just take that into consideration as well, as much as I want my kids back.
I agree. And I've kind of had that feedback from different families with kids in multiple grades that, we need to get them all back, because what am I supposed to do if I got one going and the other and I don't have someone to watch? And so I agree that consistency, I think, would be important.
What is the chance? I guess my concern is what if we make it the whole district at once. My concern is what happens if something falls through with the primary building or we can't get enough people hired. Does that mean we don't come back for the high school if we chose to keep it all together, K-12 or pre-K-12? Now that's my question, because if we make it all or nothing, or do we do elementary, high school, or do we do it at a certain point, and if elementary is not ready, we phase in high school? I guess that's my thought, is something could, hopefully it doesn't, but reality says that maybe something could fall through and push the elementary back, correct? Or are we pretty certain we're good?
I don't see anything wrong with the idea of opening up the high school. Like you said, those who are able to come will come, on that Friday. If they still have siblings at home, they've got to stay home. I get that. But maybe, if 10 out of your 20 kids who were going to come on a Friday show up, that's already an improvement compared to what they're getting previously. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I'm just thinking of the hiring. How soon can you hire if you've got to hire 4 or 5 people? That's only a couple weeks. That may.
Is there any way we can utilize the 2 student teachers that are in the high school if they have a K-12 certification and they can push on to help out the elementary, and that can be utilized as their student, there's whatever the criteria that they need to graduate?
That internship piece?
Yes.
We have agreements, in their agreements, they can't be used for supervision during their experience.
I thought that, not trying to challenge that, Julie, but I thought that student teachers were being utilized that way during this period of COVID.
Some programs, yes. Now, I will say that Noah Bates, who's got special ed and social studies, but his certification is only 712, so I'm not sure that would apply. I'm not sure about Rachel's. Rachel does have a provision in there where I think we did put her in as a substitute, but it would be for times that she could cover that are not, so on Amy's planning periods or something like that, or if Amy was
Sure.
out, if Amy was out for the day, that she could be Amy's sub. But
Okay.
that she wouldn't, so that she was still getting the experience in her content area. Now, maybe at a certain point, if Amy was willing, we could use her temporarily, but,
I was just trying to think
Yeah.
outside of the box.
I don't think Noah would fit, but I don't know, that would be up to Dave. And I think, we have a special ed teacher who might be out for the rest of the year. And my plan was, as soon as he's done with his student teaching, I think at the end of April, that he could possibly be substitute for that teacher for the rest of the year here.
Okay.
So,
So my other point that I wanted to also make was I understand the issues in the elementary. My concern though is I've sat in on enough board meetings and I've had enough many conversations with obviously colleagues, but parents as well. And I know that we are all having these conversations to get kids in because of the community and what their desires and needs are. And I've heard mostly that it's elementary needs. Yes, we have high school needs, but our high school kids have acclimated for the most part. Those that haven't, we brought in for the 4 days. I really think that the elementary, we've got to get them in to keep the relationship with the community and the perception that's out there or whatever. That's just my 2 cents, and I apologize because I'm coming from the high school, but I'm hearing it K-12, and I'm hearing it from parents that have kids in the elementary as well. So I need to say that in order to know that I said my piece tonight. So.
Okay, anything else to the pacing? Okay, great. Starting to run a little bit short on time, and that's okay. Let's talk summer school for a little bit. The BLPT's talked about summer school at all, or has your focus been mainly on reentry?
right now, we basically just finished up reentry, and I think, we kind of left it, and I left it with our parent representatives that we would like to, if they're available, to invite them back, if we were gonna do it at the building level, or we could do it here. And it might be worth having a conversation about that, because we're really just talking 7, 8, that would be in district. So I think we could have a variety of approaches to that, but we have not talked about it. We could reconvene in April, for a meeting, or 2, and we did talk about that. We do have a few other things, but that we went right till the end. We had 3 2-hour meetings, and we thought we might be done a little early today, but we went really just right to the end with the reentry, but I think we have a solid plan. One update I will give you about the high school 9 through 12 is that it was announced among the principal group, the regional principal group that I'm in, is that Granville will be hosting the regional summer school, and it will be online this year, same as last summer. And they released their list of courses. So it's online, but it's synchronous. It's not just you just do all your work, you log in and you're interacting with the teacher the whole time. That's the setup. So that seems, I'm not sure if there are going to be other regional options, but that one is already on the table. So we at least will have one option for our 9 through 12 students. And then we'll see. I'm not sure if Cambridge is going to offer an in-person, but so far that's the communication I have. So we will have at least one option for our 9 through 12. And the students who took it last year were successful. I think it was a model that they were able to be successful in. I think we had 4 students last year who enrolled. It was a smaller pool because of the situation last year, but they all did well.
Okay, Karen?
So no, we have not spoken about summer school. We haven't gotten to that. It's been all about the reentry plan. I know I would like to, and just have not had the opportunity. I would like to sit down and talk with the people from Lunch, Learn, and Play to find out how maybe we can sync up and kind of approach it in different manners so that we can make sure we're getting as many kids as possible. But no, the BLPT has not spoken about it yet.
Okay. I've had a couple conversations with the courthouse
Okay.
and lunch, learn and play since. There, we aren't going to end up having any conflict that are in there. That's set. And where we're working is we're still in a spot where we're being cooperative and not competitive. That's there, because if we're able to do some of the things that they did last year, it saves them funds. Because their funding only goes so far. And then they're going to be able to take that funding and then reapply it into the lunch, learn and play program more. Versus having a lunch, learn and play plus a literacy plus a whatever else that's there. So we still have some conversations to have for what that looks, but I think kind of those initial conversations of us doing something in the morning, having, lunch available. Because with the hopes of us being the lunch for lunch, learn and play as well for kids. And then the lunch, learn and play program after that basics is still intact. But there's still more conversations to have in that. So we're on track. We're on track. Any other questions on summer? Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I know in conversations I've had with some of the teachers who have been doing the lunch, learn and play for quite some time, and that were also part of their program last summer. Some of the ideas that have been thrown out, which actually I'm thinking might be really good, is for them to focus on like the K1, K through second kiddos, because most of the people who do it are those younger grades. And that way we could really focus in on like our second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, or third through sixth kiddos, which would open it up for more kids at those grade levels as well to be able to bring on campus. Because again, our staffing and who we manage to get is going to be, the numbers that we need are going to be dependent on how many kids we get. So, but that was just a thought. I actually like that idea. So, yeah, just a part of the conversation.
Yep. Anyone else have thoughts on summer? We'll solidly talk about summer more, particularly as the BLPTs gear up a little more work toward that. In case there's something in a larger district idea like transportation or, the feeding program over the summer, or those things that would fit a little bit better here for us to worry about versus than at the building level to work from there. So we'll chat there. Next item, it's just going to be just a quick overview, and that's about assistance for next year. The board is going to be having conversations about this in part in an upcoming budget meeting. There have been suggestions that have been put into place, basically surrounds, and principals jump in here for quick add if you'd like. Basically surrounds, bringing in additional AIS type staff to support at each grade level. So if I remember right, at the elementary, it's about one more math specialist and then a generalist for RTI and AIS services at the elementary level. And then at the secondary level, it's a math person and a generalist for RTI AIS services there, if I remember correctly. Did I remember correctly?
Did you say only math or both math and English for high school?
I think I just said only math, but
Math and English, and on the whole, that's where we'll make the addition is to AIS RTI, but also smaller sections. So it doesn't necessarily mean that that person is going to teach all the AIS, but it will allow us to add it. I think it'll kind of depend on that person and how everybody fits together. Ideally, we talked about that it would allow us to have English at AIS in all of the English courses, 7 through 11. And so ideally, we found this year, we tried for math, is that if for example, Anna Courtney is teaching English 9, it would be worthwhile for her to have her kids that need additional support in AIS for each teacher teaching that course to have academic intervention to be teaching that, as opposed to one person maybe teaching 5 different grade levels, having to parallel all those different curriculums. But it's really going to depend on the fit of the person that we would hire, if we're able to hire that, and where their skill set is, and same for math. So it'd be a combination of additional sections. So and I will present the numbers, but all of the sections would be in English and math around 15 students or less, which would allow for more teacher contact time. I think that's the one silver lining that we have found in the team model, is that the students, the student-teacher relationship and the productivity, the discussions, the student interaction is much more productive with those smaller class sizes, which would really benefit them foundationally. So that's where we're at, math and English.
And at the elementary, it's the math AIS teacher. So we would have 2 math AIS teachers based on the numbers that we have that are falling in that tier 2 area, and you know, making sure that we can help remediate some of those kids as best we can. And the other position is another special education teacher to support and keep us in compliance with all of our kiddos.
Okay, part of what I'd like, maybe homework for folks is to put our thinking hats on for a plan B. One of the challenges we're going to be facing in this budget is being able to provide that level of servicing through teachers. Now, part of it we're going to look at, which we'll just touch briefly on today, is what grants might be able to help out in some of this work. Knowing that some of our grants currently pay for some of our current teachers, but is there grant work out there that might be able to help provide this type of supplemental assistance for kids that are there? But to have it and maybe just to add it into the budget is a very large number in a year where we're not strapped. We're strapped, but we're not strapped. Our budget is, and part of it is because the building project is done. So we have a very large jump in our budget this year as we start to pay off the building project. That work starts this year. It's 0% on the tax levy that's there, but it's like $1.2 million getting added to the budget. And to add 4 teachers in is something in the neighborhood of $400,000, which creates a problem with being able to bring in enough support. Now the board may decide, yes, let's do it this way. And then we'll worry about funding in a different manner. But if we've got a plan B, that would be good to have for just in case, because we're going to want to be able to have some type of supplementation to help, even if it isn't in the form of extra people or 4 extra people. So it's food for thought. It's items to talk about, just to kind of keep it in your memory, and we'll bring it up again.
Can I ask a question about that? Because I
Yep,
think about what you think the timing is for that, because I think, and Danny, I think from the high school standpoint, with just our instructional model at the junior, senior high school, so Danny and Don jump in, but I think it's really important that we find a way to work either in our building, BLPT, or our teacher group to get some feedback and thoughts, whether it's by department or in BLPT, because I think it's going to affect, it changes a lot, and we'll really have to make some decisions about course that we could then bring to this group, so I don't know if we should just go ahead and talk about Plan B, that, we can go back to the buildings and our families and start talking about that. Because I think it's going to be a few conversations if we don't Or would we just work on that after we present it to the board? I guess that's my question is, when would we have to have that?
For my spot, it's, the sooner that we start having that conversation, the better. From, my 2 cents. It's, we can talk about, plan A is this. Here is, this is what we're going to try to do with the budget. But if we can't get this to happen, we need to have a plan B. And so to have that, that backup plan into place sooner is going to be more beneficial. Because I don't think we don't want to be in a spot where we say, okay, we know that the high school, we know the elementary, we know where we have these needs. Here's the kids, here's what our iReady scores say, here's whatever value you want to put into whatever state assessments, here's what they have to say, this place, here's what the teachers are saying, here's the type of year they've had. So here's all of our data. Here's where our cutoff is, or where the kids that we absolutely have to pay attention to. And here's the next tier, and then here's the next tier, and here's the next tier, and set, and then go and say, okay, our plan, we can't do our plan because it's not going to fit in our budget. So we just aren't going to be able to help these kids. We're still going to need to be able to help these kids. But so how are we going to do that? So I would start conversations now and just say it's back up just in case. This isn't the ideal, but it may be an idea so we can still address the needs of our kids, even in the event of not having extra help. And to see what that looks like. So with that, I did promise a quick look at title. I'm just going to kind of pop up 2 different ideas here so you can kind of see what the basics look like. And it's the basic of what the grant is, and then the basics of what the budget narrative is that we get. And we do these every year. As we get a little bit more into this, if you will, we will talk more about the data that goes and setting into support. Right now, it's just here's the familiarity where the numbers are and where the budget is, and kind of what we've done in the past and to make it happen, and then what we think we want to start talking about next year for some of these other things. And I want to share, I'm just going to share screen 1. Okay. You see me scrolling through a document?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. So this is basically what we sent into the state, along with all sorts of different paperwork that goes with it about how what we spend, and we'll talk more about that later. But in the basics of it, we get a certain allocation that we get told to by the state. It's federal money. And in that federal money, it is, here is the dollar amount. And then we come up with how that gets spent. Feds say that gets looked at and discussed in a shared decision maker type of a way, along with reviewing the data into how that can work. Kind of historically here, these are Title I funds. Title I funds are basically designed and designated to focus at students who need additional help and supports and services that are in place. A while ago, we used to be what they call the targeted school, which means we had targeted criteria of which we applied it to, but based on our needs and looking for some increased flexibility in how to spend these funds, we became a school-wide district, which means we can take these monies and then apply them to all students, because we're saying that all of our students have some level of assistance that they need. And then we go through, and like for professional salaries, we have to tell them who it is, who we're paying for, by position, and then how those pieces work out. We have we have money set aside for homeless every year, and these are all the pieces that go into that we get to put into place. So professional salaries are exactly that. Support salaries would be like teacher aides, teacher assistants, and those positions. Purchase services would be things like iReady. In fact, I think that's how we started iReady, is through a grant. Supplies and materials is the same as the materials and supplies you do in your normal budgets. Travel expenses sounds exactly as what it is. Employee benefits go along with the salary. So we could take that money and say, we're going to pay for one person in his or her entirety, and apply that there. Indirect costs are those indirect costs, like building use, copiers, phones, those types of things. BOCES services is exactly that. Believe it or not, you can do minor remodeling with your title funds. This tends to go for things like, do you have to do something to a classroom for pre-K, for example? So it's minor adjustments into there. And then equipment purchases are equipment purchases. So we take this information. Hold on.
Question, while you're
Yep.
doing that, under that remodeling thing,
Yep.
that concept, would something like for Karen Keith's room, would that fall under that?
That might. We would have to look up to see specifically what it says in there and how big that can be. But yeah, it's that type of thing. If you need to take a space to make it conducive, to make it for the benefit of a student, and I use pre-K as an example because that tends to be an example given, that might work in that realm.
Okay.
So we send it 2 ways. Budget narrative just is the same information, just rearranged differently. We send them both in, and that's Title I. Title II is about really professional development, parent involvement, and teacher improvement overall. That fits into this budget. So here, professional development for faculty, it's various, it's there. This is an older one. It says it's 2019. We can't get away with that word various anymore. It has to be much more specific. So like I said, when we did iReady, we put it in there. We put in what the dollar amount was going to be, and that was there. 1 year in another school district to remain unnamed, Ms. Foligno, we purchased an entire curriculum, you might know it as Fontes and Pinnell, as our alternative curriculum for AIS services to there, because it had the assessment to go with the boxes. And so we used that as a curriculum piece. That work got purchased in here. The professional development for here came from a Title II grant. Here's the mileage and travel expenses that go. Notice all the categories are the same. Dollar amount is much less. But this is the spot for generally when you put in for a conference, teachers, and you say, I want to go see this conference on blank, it tends to come from this budget. When it goes there, it tends not to come from the general budget. And then there again, the budget narrative looks just about identical to what that's one. Where's my 2? It's almost identical. I pulled it up twice, but I don't know why the state makes us do it twice, but it does. That is the basics of title. And what they basically want us to do is look at the data and then see what we need for kids. Everything's through an equity lens now, not only in making sure that kids who need and get supports need and get those supports, but also in cases of that we are taking that money and that it's getting spent equitably across the district. Not as much of an issue for us because we're really a one school show, if you will. But for school districts like Saratoga Springs, the state and the feds actually compare all the elementary schools to make sure that the spending is equitable across all of their elementary schools. So folks who go to Division Street have the same, at least equitable funds available to them as they do on, one of the other elementary schools. I was just going to say Division Street twice, but Dorothy Nolan and Division Street are money is getting equitably spent into those school buildings. As an example for like a larger school district. But for us, we're one school show. So when they look at us, they look at what's getting spent at the high school versus what's getting spent at the elementary school. And is there a certain level of equity between the two? And there's a whole reports that we have to fill out to make sure that happens. Any questions on the title? Does anyone have anything else for the good of the order?
Dave, I just have one question.
Sure.
My original job when I was first hired was hired off on a Reading First grant, and we were in a similar situation in the budget, state or countrywide. So
Yep.
you had mentioned that grant writing is ideal. Are there enough grants out there that warrant perhaps a half-time position? Would it be lucrative for the district to think about hiring somebody to focus on that?
Not enough for us to hire somebody, but there are pieces out there where we've reached out like to CASDA or BOCES to help with a grant writer on like a contractual basis.
Okay.
What we tend to do with those grants is we'll write the cost of the grant writer right into the grant.
Okay.
That's
Just
there.
curious
So,
because I know it depends on the district how they handle it.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure.
luckily with the title grants, they're referred to as block grants. We get this money. It's not a case of it's not a competitive grant, which a lot of the state grants are nowadays. The federal grants from the title funds are all out of the, Every Student Can Succeed Act, and all the way back to 1965 when it was, the Elementary and Secondary Schools Act. That this is money that goes to the school. You can write it left-handed in crayon. We're still going to get that money. They might make you rewrite it, but you're still going to get, you're still going to get the money. You just have to jump through all their hoops and make sure that you've checked all their boxes, and then the funds come in.
Okay. I just didn't know if outside
Yep.
of federal grants, if there was something out there that was.
Outside of federal, it tends to be more micro grants that
Okay.
have been available to us. I mean, things like Lowe's does one, or there's a lot of corporations do. It's kind of the micro grant thing now, because that way it's easier for teachers to get their hands on the money because they want to give the money to teachers. There are bigger grants out there. Things like the Montesano does a grant like $25,000 per region every year, or $10,000 for kind of secondary ideas. There's all sorts of grants out there. But it needs to be able to focus on what we're doing. The newest challenge we've had with grants is that it's a supplement versus supplant. And that you can't take grant money and replace money that's coming out of your budget already. So you can't say, okay, so rather than putting the elementary principal in the budget, we're going to pay for the elementary principal in a grant and then take the money from the elementary principal's budget and then put that somewhere else. They don't let us do that. It's all about, okay, so it would be more like what that plan is about bringing extra help in. At the high school, we want to have an extra ELA teacher to handle AIS and RTI services. That's a supplemental service that might be able to work.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anything else for the good of the order? Okay, so next meeting, if anyone has anything they would like to add on, please zip me an email and I will be sure to get it on. A couple things that I want to talk about a little bit at the next meeting is kind of a continuation of some of this work because it's all connected with the title. So talk a little data there a little bit. And I want to talk about graduation rates. Because, the piece is, I know we have a lot of focus on our elementary kids and getting them back and what do we need to do to meet them where they are to get them to going. But we know last year we lost 3 or 4 kids because they weren't here. We weren't here to get our claws into them. It's going to happen this year and has happened this year too. So at the graduation end of things, I want to take some time and what can we do to help get that graduation rate back on track for the upcoming year, because that's not just 9 through 12, that's a 3 through 12 part and issue to take a look at. To start looking at there and come up with some ideas for next year to kind of help with, the other supplementation we're doing for at the elementary and at the high school. When's a good time for you guys to meet? What dates work better for you?
Just throw a couple dates out there and we'll
What are you
like,
thinking about for time frame?
Yeah. Well, I think based on the part from, from this group for the plan is really the transportation pieces of it. And I think we have enough on the return to school piece is that, the basic opinion that I heard is it's got to kind of work with, as we can put the school back together to get folks in, it's got to work with that model. It's got to work with families. And we have the suggestion of a couple grade levels at a time to slow roll it in. So I think we're okay for the reentry part of this. So the kind of the phases where I think the board has that focus on, I think we're good. Now it's the next year pieces that's there. So do we want to try to meet maybe that Tuesday when we get back? Because by then we should have the rest of the plan put together too, right?
are we thinking the same time, Dave? Like
I don't know.
the 7th? Okay.
So what day is that, the 13th?
Yes, that would be Tuesday, the 13th.
So here's the problem, Dr. Glover, is the supervision of those games. I mean, that's gonna take either you or me out almost every night.
Yeah.
So I don't know how we work through that.
Maybe we have to wait till the week after. We'll go with what we have for the plan based on this conversation. Maybe we have to do it the week of the 19th.
And I could do on the week of the 19th, the only day I could maybe do is the 20th. There's games on the other days that either you or I would need to be at. We could do the 20th, Tuesday. I could do a 6. I got something earlier, or Monday.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. Okay, we're up to the 27th. We're off to the 28th.
Here's the piece though, if you guys are going to be really focusing in on more of the high school at those meetings, do you want me to cover the games on that night? I mean, that's not an issue for me.
What are we doing at the height? What would be the focus of the meeting, I guess?
Because I know you wanted
Well-
to talk graduation rates.
Yeah, next meeting is more is title, data, supports for next year and graduation rates.
I can get you any information like for the title stuff that maybe I would be interested in having discussed there. The stuff for next year, I can get any data or anything you want for that meeting as well. I'm just trying to help out because it just sounds to me it might be where this was more about reopening and more of the elementary components. It sounds like the next meeting's going to be geared more towards high school.
Yep. Okay, guys, let's do this. We'll plan on it happening after break. Karen and I just found out that they're going to possibly allowing more spectators in athletic contests, which is going to require an administrator to be at those contests, which means we just got busier because we're going to have to be at those contests because we have to do all the screening at those contests. So we'll see what we can do for fine and shuffle. Then we'll send out a couple dates to the group, and then we'll pick what works, and then we'll work around that date as it goes from there and go from there. I guess last note for me is, we got Keenan. Yay, Keenan. But we need to start looking at a junior to bring in because it's not going to be long. Yay, Keenan is not going to be with us anymore. He's going to go and graduate on us. Yay, Keenan. That's there. Also, Rosalind's here. Thanks, Rosalind. Good to see you, at least on the phone.
Guys, yeah.
We need to bring some more parents in to have more of that voice here. This will continue to be a public meeting. So we'll be able to have folks there, but I'd like to have a couple more parents on board.
I think what would be probably a thought about for the parents is if we can try to get a routine of the same night or like the same month, every month, if we're gonna do it monthly, because some parents, I know I talked to one parent about my committee and she said, well, I can do Tuesdays and Thursdays, but not Mondays and Wednesdays, right? So if we can, that way people know what night they're committing to on a regular basis, that might help us get someone who can participate on a more regular.
Thursday bad.
Yeah. Yep. Would like to keep it consistent here too. With April's being as crazy it is, that we may end up meeting, I try to have all these committees done by May. So June can be June. So, we may be
We also
meeting,
needed to talk about the code of conduct.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to, so we're going to be meeting a little more often because we actually have some work we got to do.
I'll send you the dates that I could do.
Okay. We can chat offline. With that, everybody, it is 7:14. I am past my time. I apologize unreservedly. Thank you so much for being here tonight on this, what was today officially, second Monday. That's there, which makes tomorrow second Friday, before third Friday, which begins a vacation week, right? Because we have 2 Mondays and 3 Fridays in a week.
It's their Friday, Saturday.
Yeah, I can't even try. So with that, good night, everybody.
Thank you.
We will see you soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.